What's up, everybody? Welcome back to episode 5. If you have not checked out our latest 3 episodes of To the Show We Go, featuring Ed Hand and myself, Andrew Parker, we've had 3 2023 Red Sox draftees, Trent O'Donnell, Zach Fogel, and Cade Feeney on. So if you haven't checked those out, go check those out. Those guys have great stories, a lot of stories about the complex league and just things going through the draft, like Cade Feeney from North Dakota. It's like a great story. Sports just are baseball season's 2 months up there. So he's had some good background, but today we have a little twist, I guess. It's not a player.
Changing it up.
Yeah, it's not a player. It's Red Sox beat writer, author of my offseason read, A Damn Near Perfect Game, and Mr. Baseball Isn't Boring himself, Rob Bradford.
Hey, guys, first of all, awesome job with the podcast so far. It's a great idea, and I love the conversations. And I'm sorry to put this a little bump in the road of having me on, but you guys have a ton of momentum. So excellent job so far. It's going to be a great way to get through the hot stove season and the baseball season. So awesome job.
Well, I honestly love what you're doing with Baseball Isn't Boring. I've watched probably about 100 clips of you talking to Matt Strom, Kenley Jansen, just like you're just talking to guy after guy after guy. And my favorite so far was the Brandon Marsh. I think that was a few months back, but I love Brandon Marsh. He is one of the, I think he's one of the more interesting guys out there. But I'm just like, I'm glad Ed brought this up to just kind of let's talk to some guys and just see what's going on. Because after spending this year in Worcester, we kind of got to see the guys, I guess, behind the TV screen. I guess people don't really realize what these guys are all about. So kudos to you and what you're doing. That's Baseball Isn't Boring is awesome. And I absolutely love every single time you post a video of like behind the scenes in the dugout. So thank you for that.
Well, yeah, thanks for saying that. It's a lot. I'm not going to lie to you. So, I think that as Ed maybe knows, Ed's come on and he's done a great job with it. And hopefully he'll do the same with free agent stuff. But it just goes back the whole Baseball Isn't Boring story. I'll tell really quick, which is in January 2022, Joe Kelly and I had the idea for the book, but publishers, they said, well, Joe isn't on social media, which evidently is a big thing. I'm like, okay, well, whatever. I mean, the book is supposed to be him interviewing people who are on social media. But so we're like, all right, well, we're just sort of reverse engineer it and we'll get the conversation going. And the working title was Baseball Isn't Boring. And so we started the social accounts. Thanks. My guy Coop did a great job helping start with that. So we started the social accounts and we got the t-shirts, Swing Juice t-shirts going. And Joe does an op-ed for the LA Times during the lockout. And so all of it, as we quickly found out, people like the saying, like the idea, like the narrative. And it hit the sweet spot. Yet there was no podcast. So we go through the whole year. We get the book deal. We do the book and we get through the whole year. And I knew that there was the podcast was the next step. And fortunately, Odyssey was nice enough to shift out around some of my responsibilities. And okay, hey, you know what? National daily podcast, baseball, and let's do it. And so we started in the World Series of last year, and we've done it. I don't think we've missed a day, every single day, and it's obviously guest driven. So that's a little bit challenging, but the conversation continues. People like doing it. I'm going around, with the Phillies clubhouse the other day, and yeah, some of them know it from Strom being on and Marsh being on, but like the owner, John Middleton, I'm like, here you go. Hey, here's my Mike Flag baseball. Oh, I love that idea. You're like, okay, Stu Sternberg, give me a sticker. The Tampa Bay owner. People like the idea of it, which doesn't always lead to, hey, absolutely, I'll come on. It's still work. But at the same time, I just feel like the narrative is a universal one. And it sort of led us down the road of getting a lot of great conversations. And like you said, Adrian, like the fact is to sit down with guys, as you guys have found out, to sit down with guys and just have conversations. This is what the players come to understand, that podcasts are like, this is a chance to express their personality and just have conversations instead. And I know I'm going on a long time here in the baseball's boring answer, but I'll just say this real quick. I did something with Mookie Betts a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about podcasting, and he talked about how that doing his podcast was helpful for him as a human being because it allowed him to become a better listener. Because all he knew in interviews were people going up, reading off questions, him wanting to get out the sound bites and get out of there. So the back and forth of a podcast for Mookie has been, for him, has changed the way he approaches human conversation. So there you go. Put that on the bumper stickers.
Wow.
Mookie Betts, podcasts have saved my life. No, just kidding. No, but it's no, but I thought that was really, he was very honest about it. And I told him, I can see that. Like I can see, you guys have talked to players, the difference between sitting down and doing a podcast and actually having to, like, you do the I'm going to ask you a question. Now I'm going to ask you another question. Now you're going to ask you another question and you're giving me short answers. Okay, we're done. So, yeah. So anyway, baseball's important. There you
go. For you, has it been, what's the transition been like for you from, because you're coming from running WEI's website and writing daily, and there's a lot of differences between that and the preparation that goes into it. Has it been a difficult transition for you?
Like I said, it's a lot. I find it's a harder to do than maybe I thought it was because it is daily, and really it's multiple times a day now, and it's through the weekend now. And doing the podcast is the easiest part. That, like, this sort of stuff, this is the easiest part. Talking and just having a conversation. And I'm not one for a big, like, I have a bunch of lists, and I usually have an idea of where we're going to go. Like I just did Rich Hill for 50 minutes, and it was in a hotel room, and we just talked. I had basically an idea. So doing the podcast, the easiest part, but like lining it up, and then, as you guys know, a big part of any podcast is marketing it and separating it from the other podcasts, and that's exhausting. So all of that is very, very time consuming. But part of my job is still to cover the Red Sox for WEEI and for Odyssey. And so I find myself frustrated with myself sometimes that I'm not able to write as much because I just don't have the time. And I'm not able to get to a lot of stuff that other writers are getting to. But it is what it is. I mean, I can't beat myself up over it. I think that it really is sort of a case-by-case basis. If my responsibility is to do this podcast. My other responsibility is to keep up on Red Sox stuff as much as possible. And so I'll do both of them to the best of my ability. It's just not like it used to be. I mean, that's the flat out answer, is that when, Alex Spear was with me at EEI, when John Tomasi was with me at EEI, when Ryan Hannibal was with me at EEI, we could cover a ton of stuff. But it's just not enough hours in the day. And honestly, guys, I don't think you need to anymore. You don't need to anymore. The minutia of everything, the game stories, are you kidding me? No, nobody cares anymore. So it's definitely, it's a good question. It's definitely different, but there's nothing I enjoy better than writing, because that's the most, it's the hardest thing, but it's the most satisfying thing.
I've always been curious of something, and I've noticed myself just struggling with it here, even like during the season, like when I was in the Woo Sox locker room and stuff, is how every series I saw you for Baseballs and Boring would go and talk to a guy on the opposing team. For the most part, like, I feel like you always had somebody there that was from the away team. So did you just kind of, like, how does that prep look like? So say you're going into a weekend series of Fenway, and let's say they're playing the Tigers. Like, how do you go into that? Be like, I really want to go talk to that guy.
That's a great question. So it's a case by case basis again. And so I think that I have spent more time in visitors' locker rooms, visitor clubhouses this year than ever before in my career. Not even close. Because this is how I fill up the podcast. Now, I have always been of the mind, hey, if I don't have to go through the PR, I'm not going to. And that's no knock on the PR. That's taking something off their plate. It's, I'm going to go up to somebody, hey, do you have the time? And usually it's, hey, it's a Friday, either Saturday or Sunday. Can you do this? Because I know that the first games of series are busy. So a lot of times that works. A lot of times that's the way to do it. But at the same time, what I found is every team is different. Every clubhouse is different. So sometimes the PR department really wants you to go through them. So, okay, if that's what they want me to do, I'll do it. I'd rather just go up to the guy and ask him. You always have to find also the angle. Like if to believe it or not, like I got to know Jake Diekman really, really well, 10 times better than when he was with the Red Sox, because he was a teammate of Joe Kelly. And we sort of like, hey, you know what? We bonded over that. So to have anybody in that clubhouse as sort of your representative who can pass the word on, like I go in the Dodgers clubhouse and, you're sponsored. So you find the angles that you can, but you also identified the most interesting people. Like I don't know AJ Puck and interview him. Joey Votto we had on in the offseason. Hey, Joey, can you do this again when you come to town? I'm trying to blank. Colorado. Oh my goodness, a couple guys.
Chris Bryant.
No, who was that guy who came from Cleveland who broke out?
Nolan Jones.
Nolan Jones. Hey, I find your story interesting, and I find we're doing a lot on what it's like to get traded. Do you have time? And usually the thing is, once they do it, most of the time they're like, oh, that was enjoyable. Like I did Brandon Gomes, the Dodgers, a couple weeks ago, and he's like, oh, yeah, like those were good questions. Like that's the highest compliment that I can have. And I think it's not so it's the questions, but the conversation. That the first time we did Casas last year, he's like, oh, I didn't know it was going to be like that, like in a good way. And like they understand it's not going to be just a painful thing. But the best, the most, I don't know, painful story, but the most slap in the face story of that whole thing about how sometimes it doesn't always work and it's always a work in progress was that one day I was in Worcester this year. And I went there. Norfolk was there. It was a day they had call-ups. I'm like, all right, two people I want to talk to. I want to talk to Heston Kjerstad because I find him interesting and obviously a top prospect that people care about. And Buck Britton, the manager, and I wanted to talk to him about the dynamic of telling guys that they're going up because they have the viral Adley Rutschman and everything else like that. So I show up. No, there's no other writers around. Walk in, nobody's there. There's no other writers. The players are there. They're like, hey, can you wait outside? Okay, that's fine. I understand. Sometimes it happens. And then they're like, any interviews have to be cleared not through the Norfolk people, but through the Baltimore people. I'm like, I had never heard of that in my life. And so I'm like, okay. So I email the Baltimore PR, who very nice. And they're like, okay, you got approval. But I'm sitting there. I'm like, these guys, Daz Cameron is sitting right in front of me. I know his dad, Mike. He's sitting right in front of me, but I can't interview him because I don't have approval. So to answer your question, it's what I found is that every place is different, but the biggest thing is just to go up, present what you want to do, be honest about them, be honest about it, and give yourself as much time to do it as possible. If you don't have to do it right then and there, then don't do it. And always have a free T-shirt ready to go.
We gotta get those T-shirts made, Parker.
Yeah, I guess that's something that wasn't in the cards, but might have to be, I guess, later in the off season if we start getting some traction here. But I was gonna say I was a little upset with myself as I was in Worcester for home games probably I would probably say I was at 90% of the games. And the one game I didn't go to, I think that whole week was the game you were there. So I was like kind of kicking myself. I was like, dang, like I missed out on that. But
you guys did a great job with it, man. Like, and I'm not saying that. It's everyone who covered Worcester. It's there were so many good stories there, and it's funny though. I do find when I go, because I don't go to was like the same thing when it used to be with Pawtucket. I don't go there nearly as much as I would like. I just it's a long drive, and I'm just like, oh man, I need a breather. Season's long, but being around these guys in spring training goes so far in terms of just them. Oh yeah, like for example, I just saw Jorge Alfaro, your guy Ed,
My guy, yeah.
Jorge Alfaro, and he's sitting in the Marlins dugout, and I'm like, is that Jorge Alfaro? And because of I got to know him a little bit in spring training, that helped a ton. And I think with the Worcester guys, it's the same sort of thing. I'm trying to think of oh my goodness. But anyway, like so a lot of those guys, when you walk in, it's almost like you represent like a time where the big leagues are around the corner. And I'm not saying that's because of me, but I'm just like, it's, oh, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? What are you doing here? And like, okay, well, I'm here to report and everything. And like I hadn't seen Bobby Dahlback since he had called up for 5 minutes in Boston. And we end up talking and I tell you what, and you guys would know better than I, but it seemed like a great clubhouse in Worcester. At least, Bobby, that's what he was saying. He's like, it was an awesome clubhouse, but great group of guys. Yeah, it was a good time. And then I think that time too, I ended up talking to Christian Arroyo, and that was a tough conversation. But I think, Christian's a great guy and he's going to do great things, but it's just good to see other people really.
Yeah. So moving a little bit more towards your other role with EI and Nesson. What are you hearing right now about the search for a new head of baseball operations for the Red Sox?
What I heard is that it's going to take a long time. And I know they said this, but I just heard it again the other day. It's like, this isn't going to be quick. And Heim wasn't perceived as quick, but I think they had locked in on Heim pretty early. Like, I don't think this was an exhaustive search. I just don't. And Dabrowski was definitely not an exhaustive search. I mean, yeah, I think there's a reason why Detroit made them play a day game after traveling back from somebody a night game the next year. They weren't happy how that went down. And so you look at Dabrowski, you look at Heim, this is different. And this is going to be a little bit longer. Now, so and I'm going to write this because I've been really thinking about the names and the dynamic that they're facing. And so I think that you obviously have Sam Full, right? Guy who I talked to the other day, good guy, clearly has washboard abs because I took a video of him like with champagne on him. Like, you should not, that should not happen. Like, you're disqualified. No president of baseball operations has washboard abs. But New Hampshire guy, and we know the story of Sam. He interviewed for the manager's job, and I do think they like him. Brendan Gomes is another one, but I'm still having a hard time getting my head around people who haven't done it before, and B, the dynamic of not having some semblance of history with Alex Cora. Like, both those things are for me, like, for as important a hire it is, maybe they say, hey, we're willing to find the next star. We're willing to go this route, but that's what they tried to do with Heim. So, three names I am keeping an eye on are obviously Eddie Romero internally, John Daniels, who's with Tampa now, obviously long time with Texas, and Kim Ng. Now, obviously Eddie knows Alex from forever here. John Daniels knows Alex he played with him for like 10 days in Texas, but also he interviewed him. I think that was his first managerial interview with John. And obviously John's done a million different things. I mean, I'm not a million different things, but had done the Texas thing for a long, long time. So a million different things in that job. And Kim Ng, who, as a lot of people know, her contract seems to be up in Miami, and they don't have a lot of money to spend. But she's done a lot in this game in a lot of different sort of organizations. And I just love the way that she trades. I mean, some gutsy trades. You know, you look at obviously Pablo Lopez for Luis Ariz, but I look at like the JJ Bleday, that 4th overall pick in the draft for we like this pitcher, AJ Puck. You know, okay, the Jake Berger trade. You know, like how much should he mean for that team? And you can't give up a pitching prospect. Well, how's that guy done since he got traded? He didn't do well. Like you got a guy under control. So those 3 candidates, I'm not saying that I absolutely know that. I know Eddie will get an interview, obviously, but I can't absolutely say for certain that the other 2 are at the top, absolute, no doubt about it, at the top of their list. But just talking to some people, I can say that it's a pretty good educated guess.
So I like how you just kind of talked about, the Marlins making those good trades. What would you say, in your opinion, was the biggest downfall, I guess, for Bloom this past season? And I guess even beyond that.
I think the trade deadlines killed him for the last couple of years. And really, it's the results after the trade deadline. I mean, they could have said, oh, well, this worked out and done nothing, but it didn't work out. You know, you had 3 Augusts, right? You had 12 and 16, 12 and 16, and 13 and 15. This past August, you know, you had the Blue Jays sitting right in front of you, and you go into that series and you have to start relievers of 20 to 27 innings, and you get swept. So instead of being 1 up, you're 5 back, and you're digging else from that hole. Then later in the month, you have the Kyle Bearclaw game. You're not equipped, you know, in pitching wise to do it. But really, so I think that was part of it. And part of that was not setting the price on trades and the perception. And this isn't just me, man. Like, this is throughout baseball, and people can say whatever they want, but I'm just telling you, like, I hear this a lot in baseball. The perception that you had to win the trade by a lot instead of just a little, you know, that hurt them. And, you know, going into this offseason, they probably said, well, you know, we're going to have to make some tough choices. So we can't take the slow play philosophy anymore. We just can't do it. We have to be a little bit more aggressive. We have to do the closer to the Dave Dombrowski offseason of, I'm going to sign a pitcher and I'm going to trade for a closer. Next thing you know, you overbid by everybody else by $40 million for David Price, and you give up Manuel Margot and who cares, 3 other guys for Craig Kimbrell. I mean, I'm not saying that extreme, but you got to start building this offseason. And a big part of that, this is the final thing, was, you know, this ownership group, apathy is the worst word that you could ever have. And it was creeping way too far to that word. So whether it was the Dodgers parade down Lansdowne Street, the dollar tickets to the Yankees, whatever it was, I mean, that's where they just said, you know, we've reached a tipping point here, and we have to sort of pivot a little bit and push away the apathy that's sort of creeping in.
There's a narrative that I've heard a little bit that the role in Boston is less desirable now than it would have been, when, say, Sherrington was heading out and Dombrowski was coming in, because some people would say that Dombrowski did his job, and then when the Roosters came to crow, or whatever the saying is, he it was like, be careful what you wish for the Red Sox. They didn't want that anymore, so they went and got Bloom. And some would say Bloom did what he was supposed to do as far as making the team a little, getting them under the luxury tax, rebuilding the farm system a little bit. How desirable is this role within the baseball world?
See, I think it's still desirable. I do. And I understand that narrative because you've had 4 and out. And we're going to let you do whatever you want to do until we don't like it anymore. And then we're going to fire you. That's never fun. But at the same time, whoever gets this job knows there's going to be money to spend. Like, so if Kim Ing says, no, thanks, but no thanks. And well, then that's a red flag. I think that because the Marlins are they're never going to spend as much as the Red Sox. And everyone can talk about the Red Sox not spending. They're still going to spend, especially now, because, again, they have to push aside apathy. So I think that, I like, as one person told me, said, hey, listen, it's the Red Sox. I mean, that's still how a lot of these people think. And if you look at the candidates, okay, well, Mike Hazen was never happening. We knew this. All right, well, who else is going to say no? I don't know. Like, if we see a flurry of people saying no, okay, Chris Antonetti, I think that would have less to do with the Red Sox and more to do with he's secure in where he is. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. So I do think that the Red Sox situation is still a desirable one. But now you have the Alex Cora element of, like, obviously you're getting the manager. Here's your manager. And I've heard different things. Obviously you have maybe the person wants to bring in their own person. But as I said, if you go after some of these other people who have a relationship with Alex and you already have a system built into things, and you don't have to turn everything over in a year, and you can have immediate success, then that is something that's worthwhile to pursue. And I don't think people look at that close enough. So anyway, to answer your question, I do think that it's still a desirable place.
So I kind of want to pivot to, I guess, a different position here within the Red Sox. I got to spend a lot of time in manager Chad Tracy's office down in Worcester this year, and we talked about it on the first episode, me, Ed, and Chris, since we were kind of in Worcester for the whole year, and I got to spend a lot of time with him. And then Baseball America names him the best manager prospect in all of minor league baseball. So I guess, is it just a matter of when, not if, on Chad Tracy getting a job in the major leagues as a coaching prospect?
To be a part of a coaching staff, or to be part of a, yeah, no, I think so. I mean, I think that obviously, he has a great name in baseball even before he started doing a great job for Worcester. And so, yeah, I mean, this is how it works. And honestly, that doesn't hurt. I mean, the Baseball America thing doesn't hurt. And I think, yeah, and good for him if he does. And that could be, it doesn't seem like there's going to be any turnover on the major league staff. But if there ever was, I mean, this guy absolutely should be part of the equation, because another part of this is, you have guys coming up that you have to have some history with, you have to be communicative with, and he can obviously do that, whether it's Rafaela or whoever else comes up. He has a relationship with him, and that helps. It just does. I mean, the major league coaching staff has a little bit of a relationship through spring training, but not like Chad does. So I do think, yeah. And it's great to see, man. Like, it's great to see. Like, I looked at when I get that chance to talk to Buck Britton of Norfolk, which is Zach Britton's brother. And yeah, like, Norfolk was crazy talented. But, like, talking to him, sometimes you talk to people and you just say, well, this is going to work or this isn't. It just, in my opinion. And those two guys, it's going to work for them at some point.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was going to put a vote in for one of your next guests on Baseball Isn't Boring, is either Chad Tracy or Paul Abbott, because I feel like they might be two of the more interesting people, especially with I got to meet Chad's dad, former manager in the big leagues, this past year, and it's the stories in that room were insane. So, that's one of my votes. I would love to hear more about just his backstory because I feel like not really many people talk about it, and maybe we're going to have him on here at some point. So that's a big one. I guess I wanted to also shoot towards, you kind of brought up some of the guys that came up. I think it was a record this year for his guys appearing in Worcester. I think they had 79. I think they ended the year 79 different players appearing in a game for the Red Sox this year. How was that, I guess, at the big league level with, like you said, you mentioned the Rafaela, the Wilyer Abreu's, and even my guy, Joe Jakes, coming up. So did any of those guys stand out to you this year? Just kind of whoa, this guy gets it.
Well, in terms of, Abreu. Abreu, everyone came away. And I've told this story before, but when Dahlback came up for 2 days in Philadelphia, he unsolicited said the guy that you have to see is Abreu. And I, having done a lot of the broadcasts for spring training, nobody probably sees more spring training games than me, fortunately or unfortunately. But Abreu, we didn't see a bunch. He hurt his hamstring in the first week of March. And they were hyping him up with Valdez, but still, we didn't see him much. He hurt his hamstring. But then I heard that from Dahlback, and then he starts obviously doing what he did, and then he comes up. And then all of a sudden, you're realizing by the end of the year that this could be like Alex Verdugo's replacement. This could be a legit everyday or almost everyday player. And I think that as we get to the end of the year, honestly, you got that. I like Rafaela, and he's a major league player, but you almost get the vibe that Abreu has more of an upside than Rafaela does. And so I think to answer your question, that's the guy that jumped out. There's no question about it. And some of these relievers that came up, they're major league relievers. They are. The problem is that the philosophy of, and it wasn't only the Red Sox who do this, so many teams are doing this, where you're just signing guys, calling them up, seeing if they stick. Brendan Bernardino, great. John Schreiber, great. That's great. And maybe a lot of them, Nick Robertson's was these guys I'm super intrigued about after seeing him not only in Worcester, but seeing him at the major league level. But fortunately, what the Red Sox did, I think this was a good move by Heim, which was why you're doing that, why you have these guys coming up from Worcester, you have the anchors. You've paid for the certainty in Chris Martin and Kenley Jansen. And then you go from there. But there was a lot of guys that came up that, I would like to see more of. And unfortunately, when they get called up, I'm going to be honest with you, in the media, there's a lot of, who's this? What's this? What's going on? It's 2000, because we're all still scarred by 2020. I guess in a lot of ways, but it's just this constant wave of names. Okay. And, you have, was Zach Littell called up, who he's called up for, a couple days. Next thing you know, he's dealing for the Tampa Bay Rays. So it's always good to keep an eye on this, but I do think that we all are scarred by how many of these guys have been called up. And that we maybe Zach Weiss was, to me, first of all, he was a blast to talk to. We did 20 minutes and the whole thing about him being a Lululemon salesman and he was pretty good. He was pretty good. So this is how it works in baseball now, right? So I know I already answered your question, but another part of that is how it works in baseball now is that you see the guy, you get the guy in the organization, you tweak a little bit here, you tweak a little bit there. Next thing you know, it becomes Ryan Brazier 2.0. So
you mentioned very briefly there Emmanuel Valdez, and I'm curious how you think the Red Sox will approach the second base position this offseason, because it seems like pitching's got to be the priority. it's not that great of a free agency market for for really any offensive players, but particularly middle infielders. We went from there being like 5 all-star shortstops to, I think, Ahmed Rosario being the best shortstop available. Pretty big difference. But there are a couple of guys with in the Sox system right now. There's Valdez. Pablo Reyes was a really nice acquisition. I don't know if he's a starting second baseman. Cedar Rafaela potentially could be that second baseman. How do you think they will approach that?
I don't think, number one, it's anything, long term at all. I mean, because you can't ignore that you have Meyer and York sitting there, and York's locked into second, right?
Yeah.
He's not playing shortstop. He's probably not playing third, so he's pretty much locked into second. So if he has a breakout year, maybe he's your second baseman. Then, of course, you have the Meyer situation. Same sort of deal. Like, what are you going to do? Like, you can't lock yourself into that position. At the same time, I like Valdez. I like him offensively, and I think he got better defensively. But for a team that's so dramatically trying to get better defensively, that's a tough one. It's a tough one to say, here you go. We're going to put an offense first, second baseman out there. So I don't know what's going to happen there, like with him. Like, he's a major league hitter. There's no question about it. Rafaela intrigues me a little bit more. If I were them, I would kind of just run him out there, say work at second base exclusively. That's it. You're the second baseman, and let's go. Let's see what you can do. Because I think defensively, he probably has the most upside. And you've have outfield covered pretty much. So yeah, I mean, I think that they have to look, guys. I mean, you have only so many spots you can improve defensively, right? You have left field, maybe juggling around that DH spot. You have second base. I don't know, maybe another outfield position. Third base, you're locked in. Shortstop, you're locked in. First base, you're locked in. Catcher, you're locked in. Center field, you're pretty much locked in. So, yeah. So, I mean, that's one of the spots that I think they're gonna have to upgrade defensively.
We're creeping up on 40 minutes here. So I did have a couple. Ed, you actually posted a tweet yesterday on, hey, what kind of questions would you like us to ask him? I don't know. This one's kind of interesting to me that somebody had put up. It says, I think it's just that time of the year. It's off season for the Red Sox. So everybody kind of like gears up for like, okay, like how can we get better for next year? So it says, Matthew Crory says, I love speculating about trades. Who would we want to give up if the price was right, and who is untouchable on the Red Sox right now, like in a theoretical trade this offseason? Big one.
Who's untouchable? I mean, I think that you look at the guys with control, with Casas, Bayo. Other than that, I mean, Devers, obviously. Story, I don't think you're trading. But other than that, like, you have to be open for business everywhere. But I think the bigger thing is that you're going to have to start dipping into the farm system, which is, a thing I think that they were reluctant in doing. And maybe that's why some of these trades weren't made. I just mentioned some of the duplication you have at the position, with York. Right? Maybe he has value. So I think that's where you sort of got to look. And because, listen, I mean, we all know what they need, right? They need pitching. They need starting pitching. They need guys who can go 5 innings. They probably need a couple guys who can go 5 innings. So, yeah, we can play, and we will play the Yamamoto game all day long. We'll play the Aaron Nola, all these guys. That's fine. But, there's other ways to get the guy. And you don't have to trade Marcelo Meyer. You don't have to trade Roman Anthony. But you can still get a guy that's useful. So I think that there's some guys that have been brought to the forefront here that they probably can get some. But the farm system guys, the tricky thing is that as much as we praise them for having a better farm system, like let's make no mistake about it. It's not like they have no doubt about it, major leaguers like Baltimore does. There's a lot more organizations that have no doubt about it, major leaguers at the ready. So that's still a little bit of a challenge, I think. But to answer that question, it's a good one. You just have to be open for business for almost everybody.
Ed, did you have any of the questions? Anybody stick out?
Yeah, the trade one was a good one. I mean, I've tried to kind of go into like with my questions from that. Were there any others from there that you wanted to ask?
I don't know. This one was a little. I saw this one on here. Somebody was asking if there was any scenario in which Chris Martin takes over as the closer, given how great of a season he had. Obviously, Kenny Jansen was good too.
If you trade Kenley, sure, but I think that those guys are part of the solution, not part of the problem, right? And please don't trade Kenley. I mean, come on, he's gone on the podcast like 50 times. Like, just go. You gotta have those guys. But I think I saw I saw a tweet, and I think I saw one of the questions, which I found interesting. If you guys don't mind, and I'm gonna
yeah.
How do I balance? You know what I'm talking about? How do I balance between being a reporter and being sort of a blogger / podcaster?
Oh, yeah. I think that was one of Kurt Strack's, who named the show, actually.
Oh, there you go. But I actually thought that was it. And I know that we sort of touched on it at the outset, but I find, because I geek out about the dynamics of the industry. And you guys know, what it's like to report. You guys know what it's like and I just like, it's a good question, because my quick answer would be like, it's a case by case basis, right? I like to have fun. I like to do the baseball's and boring thing. I like to give like guys t-shirts. I like to goof around, because at the end of the day, we're all human beings, and it's a long season. It's just how it is. We're all human beings, and baseball is more about entertainment than ever before. It just is. And I don't approach the job the same way I did when I was working for the Herald back in 2007. But when something happens, like for instance, Chaim Bloom is let go, I have to okay, well, my job is to report on whatever I know and write it as a reporter and report things. And sometimes reporting of things comes in podcast form. Sometimes it comes in written form. But there could be a lot, and we see it in this industry right now. I mean, you guys are in the middle of it. There's a lot of different things for a lot of different people. There just is. So let's not say, oh, well, that writer isn't entertaining enough, or that entertainer doesn't report enough. I mean, it is what it is, man. It is what it is. It's changed. And it's changed even in the last couple of years. So anyway, I thought that was a good question.
No, I agree, because I guess myself personally, I kind of looked at it and said, how can I differentiate myself? Obviously, not having the background that the guys from Mass Live or any of those guys have, because they have the big followings. But it's how can I differentiate my stuff compared to everybody else's? And it's that's how you kind of get started. And so I kind of dipped into this Worcester thing, because it's there wasn't really that many other people doing it. So it's been a heck of a ride this year. And
it's smart, not to interrupt you, but it's smart. You just hit the nail on the head. Listen, no matter who you are, whether you're a college student, whether you're young, someone just in the industry, whether it's someone in the industry 10 years or 20 years, as we sit here, the challenge remains the same, no matter what you're doing. It's exactly what you said, which is, how are you separating yourself? Ed, you do a great job with the free agency stuff. That's how we connected, right?
Yep.
You separated yourself there. Andrew, you're talking about the Worcester, some great reporting and some great stories in this podcast and everything, and stuff on social media. This is how it's all about, how you separate yourself. And it's exhausting, man. It is, because I wake up in the morning, I'm like, oh God, I gotta, yeah, I got to do a podcast, and then I got to find a way for like the trillion different ways to get it listened to or get it read, or to make sure that I'm keeping separating myself. And I think everyone's trying to do that. So it's harder, and I think it's harder than ever to do. It's harder than ever because there's more people. But I will say this: there's more opportunities if you're smart like you guys are.
Yeah,
I
I'll go ahead, Ed.
Oh no, I was changing the subject to something really quick. So
Oh, go for it, man.
I would be remiss not to ask you about Shohei Otani right now. There were some talks about his connection with New Balance, maybe being an interest in him coming to Boston. And then I saw today Sean McAdam reported that there was no mention of him in the pre-off season meeting that the Red Sox had. What are you hearing about the Red Sox interest in Shohei Otani, and do you believe that there's not a like, oh, it'd be great if we had him? Is there a real interest in him coming to Boston?
So the entirety of the year, I've said there's no chance. But I will say this with a caveat now. Well, that was part of that no chance is knowing how they were operating, knowing how the previous regime, the regime at the time, was sort of approaching things. And so I'm not going to say there's no chance, but I still think that it's a slim chance because it's not what they need. I mean, it's what they need. Everybody needs Otani, but Yamamoto's their guy. Like Yamamoto's their guy. I mean, I've known this since forever. Spring training, before spring training. It's like everyone freaks out about Cashman sitting behind home plate and applauding for the no-hitter for Yamamoto. Well, I mean, the Red Sox have seen him as much as the Yankees. But that's not to say they're going to get him, because you're going to get in a pretty hefty bidding war for this guy. 25-year-old free agent pitchers don't come around too often. But if you're going to say who are they going to go the hardest at, I still think it's going to be Yamamoto. And with Otani, I also come back to, like, initially, I know it was a little while ago, but he didn't even take a meeting with the Red Sox. And like I've tweeted out those jerseys, the Bruins jerseys, and they have Celtics jerseys, the Patriots jerseys with Otani on the back. Like, they were ready to go. Actually, they thought that they had a good chance of signing him out of high school. So Eddie Romero and John Diebel had basically they had gone, they had scouted him, they had talked to him, or talked to his representatives, but he didn't leave high school. But Eddie Romero said this was the best pitching prospect, high school prospect he had ever seen. So they thought them and the Dodgers were in the best position, if he chose to come out then, to sign him. So there was that relationship, but I can't get past the fact that he didn't take a meeting. Bizarrely took a meeting with the Cubs. So it wasn't just like West Coast. But I come back to that, and I just come back to, if you're going to allocate a ton of money, it's going to be to the Yamamoto, I think.
Yeah, it's I actually never knew that they had a chance to sign him out of high school.
He was never. See, it's so rare. Like, these guys almost never go from high school to the majors because it's just frowned upon so much. And it's funny because we just did a podcast, John Diebel. I mentioned him. He was with the Red Sox. Now he's with the Dodgers. And they just won the bidding war for this South Korean pitcher who, like, I think it was the signing bonus was like $900,000 something out of high school. And he said that the pushback, and I think it's the same way in Japan, the pushback to not sign out of high school from the country is so powerful, because in Korea, for instance, if that happens, they miss out on a ton of funding for the school. So if he signs with the KBO, that they get like a ton of funding for the school he's coming from. So they're not steering him in that direction at all. Nobody there with steering Shohei Otani, hey, go chase your dream in the major leagues out of high school.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about. It's obviously a lot different than it is here in the States. So it puts things in perspective a little bit. Well, you've given us 50 minutes of your time, so definitely appreciate that. Before we let you go here, what are the off-season plans for you?
Oh man. So this month it'll be very postseason heavy with baseballs and boring while reporting on Red Sox stuff. But like I said, the Red Sox stuff is going to be slow playing, I think. So, there's always, the good thing is that, as you guys know, I mean, it's where you can have on a lot of people and everybody's of interest. You guys have on some really interesting people. So there's always something to talk about. And so, yeah, I will be going to some postseason games I already have and talking about the postseason, but there's a ton of other stuff. I think the off season's almost more interesting. Whether we're talking about free agents that or talking about whatever it is, because when you're in the season, it's almost too much. It's you're exhausted by it. And so now you get to the off season. Oh my goodness, I can write a story and people are going to read it probably 3 times as much because it's the only story out there. But just to answer your question, we got this month, we got the GM meetings, which is always a good time. I coach high school basketball, run a lot of isolations. And then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of the free agent stuff in the off season. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm honest. I'm not just saying this because I'm with you guys. Like, I'm looking forward to your podcast. It's great. I mean, you've already had some really good stuff that gives good perspective. Yeah. So keep it up. It's good stuff.
Really appreciate that. That means a lot. Thank you.
I wouldn't say it if it wasn't true, Ed.
Well, we do have some good names coming up this next week. So that definitely, I don't know. I feel like Ed's just filling up the calendar, and he's got some good names. And we've been going back and forth on okay, we got to do 2 a day at this point, but it's gonna be good. But hey, thank you for the time, Rob. Obviously, 50 minutes of your time. Always appreciate that.
Oh no, listen. I mean, I'm yapping away, so I apologize. All these people had to power through it. I appreciate it. It's like I said, it's a great way to spend the day, and it's always good catching up with you guys. And I look forward to talking with both of you throughout the off season.
Absolutely. And if I don't see you at the GM meetings in Nashville, definitely going to see you.
Winter meetings
in Springfield.
Meetings, yeah. Oh, so you go to the winter meetings? Are you going?
He is. I can't, but he is.
Possibility, yeah.
All right. So have you ever been there, to the that hotel?
Oh, I've been to the Grand Ole Opry. Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
The Opryland Hotel. It's. I don't say it's the worst for the winter meetings, but for the winter meetings, the play is always finding the angles where guys are coming and going from. So that place is impossible because it's like a city. Yeah. But still, I'm so happy that you're going. It's definitely worth it. If I can help in any way, just let me know. And like you said, winter weekend, it'll be let's spin the wheel of who's going to get booed this time around. So let's go.
Yeah, I mean, I know you'll be. I'm sure you'll be doing WEI coverage up there like you were last year. I'm assuming so. So
who knows? I mean, if Mac Jones sneezes, we might get bumped. So who knows?
Well, Rob, we appreciate it, and I hope everybody has made it this far. But yeah, until next time, thank you.
Thanks, guys.